Uttar Pradesh is a land of rich traditions with a roadmap for major technology and infrastructure developments. At the Global Business Summit, the UP Pavilion was abuzz with this positive trade climate. With large investments in skill development missions already underway, Uttar Pradesh is set to offer holistic support to investors through facilities like a single window clearance system, enhanced connectivity and energy generation through sustainable technologies.
We're actually working very hard for renewable energy. In fact, we just had a meeting around 2 months ago with the Central Minister for Power, and we have agreed to give land for about 500 acres land for 600 megawatt solar energy power plants in UP. We are trying to develop our hydroelectric plants. We are trying to augment their capacity, and we are concentrating very heavily on renewable solar energy as well as solar energy from municipal solid waste. We just had a meeting with delegates from UK, and they have promised that they will help us technologically with the solar energy development as well as renewable energy from every other source, because UK has a very good technology, and we look forward to their cooperation and help.
Forums like these, business meets like these, one is able to bring forward what one is doing, what government is doing. Also, it gives a certain amount of confidence in the minds of the investor that, okay, the government is forthcoming, government is coming on its own to invite people to come and invest in the state.
We are having a single window clearance system, facilitation, online clearance system. We have now all the clearances online of all the departments. In the Udyog Bandhu, we have the Nivesh Mitra. In the Nivesh Mitra, you can just go and file your applications for any kind of clearance online. You can track it online and you'll get the clearance online. So you don't have any interface with the government departments, or you're not to be harassed or to run from pole to one pole to another. So this kind of setup we've got. So I think this is the kind of an environment is ready in which we want to bring in investment into the state of Uttar Pradesh.
Our company has started 50 years back in the state and has grown in the state, and we, given the new kind of impetus to investment in the state and the new policies that the government has brought in, our company itself has decided to invest in a 200 crore mega project in the state for manufacturing, which we are building as an advanced manufacturing and technology center in Lucknow.
As an investor, we see definitely the market size. You can't trump that. UP, if it was the country, would be 5th largest in the world. So market size is there. Secondly, you have wide spaces. Hence, we can fill them with opportunities. Thirdly, you have the demographics. Not only do you have a large size, but you also have a youthful population. So that means the market is going to be ripe, right? And other than that, there is a commitment for development.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the session on trade. So I will get straight down to my first question to the panel. And Baroness Verma, trade will continue to be one of the engines of growth, and the Bali round saw a lot of hope and optimism, both for developed as well as developing countries. Before we start talking about some of the challenges and issues on the road ahead, can I ask you for a short set of comments on what really has been progress so far?
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. I think the road to Bali set a framework, but from there we've actually seen some progress, but not enough. But I think the important thing is that when you've got over 150 countries coming together to decide on what they're individually going to do for their nations, on tackling some of the issues that are raised at Bali, then of course we need to look at it in the positive round, that we need to come to some consensus. Between the developing and the developed nations, of course, there is that chasm of growth, which we need to also recognize. But I think that from the UK perspective, one of the things the UK has led on showing is that growth within recognizing the challenges at Bali and going on from Bali, there is a huge growth potential within the renewable sector, within the green sector. And I think part of our fears of hindering development need to be overlooked from that.
Thank you very much. I think that sets us up very nicely. Mr. Thapa, if I could request you from a developing country perspective, how have you seen the road from Bali, and what are some of the challenges that your country has faced as we take this forward?
Well, thank you, Gopal. The challenge that we see is that what was committed after Bali, basically with the developed country, has not been fulfilled. Nepal is situated in such a complex situation that we've got different trade regime that we follow. Our agreement, like, we've got SAFTA in hand that combines us with South Asian trade facilitation. We've got bilateral trade relationship. And on top of that, WTO guidelines also makes it very complex. And I think one of the challenges for Nepal is to ensure that we get an umbrella act on all these issues so that we can move forward.
It's interesting you talk about regional trade agreements, and I am going to request Mr. Fragoso to actually step in over here. A very interesting situation. It's 20 years now to the date that NAFTA was signed, and at the time of signing, it was a developing country signing a trade agreement with a developed country. What would some of the challenges be, say, in getting a successful South Asian trade facilitation process going?
I think Mexico, in the case particularly of the Make of India, is a very good example of what can be achieved. I think Mexico, after we signed the North American Free Trade Agreement in 1994, our export had more than sixfold from Mexico. We have managed to double the per capita income. So it is very clear that when we work together within the World Trade Organization or within the different countries in order to free the trade, it can be a big boost. So those are the things that, if you put in mind what India is trying to do right now with the Make of India, I think you are in the right direction. And of course, everything will be replicated in another dimension, because the dimension of the Indian economy, the dimension of the domestic market that you have, can make this story, the success story, a remarkable story compared, or even better, to what some other countries have done in the past.
Minister Krem, while it clearly has been a success story, one of the challenges has been that a lot of the growth has come from multinational companies investing in the country, as distinct from domestic industry actually growing rapidly. What are some of the lessons from there that you can talk us through? How do we actually also equally promote Indian industry? That would be the first question to you.
I think if I could give some suggestion or recommendation, there is no time to lose now. One should really implement what has been backed through Bali. Secondly, I think that there's also a need for speeding up in bilateral multinational trade agreements. I would like to refer to a very important one which is about to be agreed, which is the TTIP, the European Union Trades Agreement, Free Trade Agreement with the United States and Canada. And negotiations between India and the European Union are taking place also. I would like to make a suggestion, which is that the summit European Union-India takes place as soon as possible. And this will be a very important thing for economic growth. And I think that now the time has come to make some concrete progresses on that.
Mr. Bajpai, one of the key issues on actually implementing some of the agreements reached at Bali has been skill levels across the different implementing agencies that need to make sure that what was discussed actually happens on the ground. From your experience, what are some of the big challenges there, and how do we actually start overcoming them?
Bali sought to make a new World Trade Order. There have been some hiccups also, and post-Bali, the impression is that that particular convention did not achieve fully what was expected of it. Insofar as your reference about skills is concerned, you see, skill is the basis on which the potential of a human being is realized, and he is empowered. So basically, whether it is Bali or no Bali, we have been trying in our country as such to improve the skills in our state also. Skill development, skills upgradation, and specialization of skills has to take place anyway, and the new World Trade Order has to recognize this, and it has to have a level playing field so that every nation, everybody can contribute towards it.
question to you, Mr. Singros. We've talked of some of the challenges of implementing Bali as being financial, as being skill-led. A lot of what Bali talked of would necessarily involve some regulatory and legal change in 152 countries, each of which has a fairly complex legal structure. Do you see some of this as really impeding the road going forward?
We have to change our legislation. We have to liberate our legislation. We have to minimize the restrictions that we have in our legislation in order to make the trade between developed and undeveloped countries much more easy. Greece is a very good example on that, because being member of the European Union and having all the restrictions, the market restrictions that we have in the European Union, shows us the difficulties in order to overcome the difficult financial situation that we have in our country. And I think that as soon and as quickly we'll find a way to discuss about these problems and these changes in the regulation. They will be only positive for the world trade.
And turning to you, Mr. Krem, if I may ask, Belgium is a country that has had a very strong history of export-led growth. What are some of the biggest challenges that you as a country have seen for your industry as they go to newer markets from a legal and regulatory perspective?
Well, talking about the market or the perspective of foreign trade and foreign investments, what do companies need is, in fact, a clear and distinct decision-taking process in the countries where they are investing. And that is very important. I think that's the reliability to have the investments or not. It might perhaps seem somewise or somehow not always very common to do so, but we also need a legal framework in which we can work, and it also has to be in a financial transparency. So those three things. If this is granted, I think not only from Belgium, but for other countries, United Kingdom, and also from the European Union, there is a bright future for foreign investments of individual member states, but also from the Union. But these are really three prerequisites that are absolutely needed and that need to be fulfilled.
And Baroness Verma, if I may turn back to you on one of the topics we just discussed. The UK has seen a fairly significant skill shortage across levels. And one of the challenges is that if the developed world is seeing these skill shortages, it's going to be even more pronounced in the developing world. How do you see the UK responding to some of the skill challenges from Bali? And what are some of the lessons that other countries can take away from this?
The UK has learned a number of lessons. Part of the lessons what we've learned is that instead of forecasting what we needed in the future, we were looking at what we needed at the now, and that has enabled a huge deficit to occur. Going forward for India, we see the same sort of issues arising, given that the pace of growth in India is going to be at quite a speed. So given I'm from energy and climate change, the solar sector, which we had a conversation with this morning, will need certain skill sets. What we would be very keen with the UK to do for working closely with India, and we hope to be one of the partners of choice, is to be able to work closely with states to be able to bring the expertise and the learning that UK has had over the last 20, 30 years, particularly around certain sectors, and to be able to exchange that knowledge base.
As trade flows get eased, I think one of the big concerns that many countries have is that we are going to see the emergence of low-cost manufacturing blocks and higher-cost manufacturing and higher-consuming blocks. And that is going to leave many countries kind of stuck in the middle, where they neither have the factors that can promote low-cost manufacturing, nor do they have inherently strong resource-led economies that can create a consumer base. So if I could ask you, Mr. Singros, how do you see this whole world order evolving? And I am going to ask you after that, Mr. Fragoso, for your thoughts, and Mr. Thapa for your thoughts as well on the same question.
I strongly believe that we have to think much more globally as locally. I think that thinking globally will give more locally opportunities. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of different perspective in this. Is like, if you look at the developing world, like from America, Europe, and all those, they're shifting their industrial base to Asia and Africa. Because when you look at 2-3 factors, one is infrastructure, the second is human resources, third is capital intensive. And I think now, when you look at the whole perspective of industrialized nations, like, going down, I think what Prime Minister Modi very rightly said is the year of Asia. And to that, I would also add Africa. And secondly, when you look at infrastructure, the development of Silk Road, which is called the economic belt, adds value to it also, because that economic belt is going to take all our product that can be manufactured in Asia, all through Europe as well as in South and Southeast Asia. And third is also the human resources capability that Asia has.
And Mr. Fragoso, your thoughts on this?
I would really like to recommend, and this is something that we are seeing it in Mexico, is that after all the foreign direct investment that we have got in Mexico, we end up with two realities in Mexico. We end up the first reality about all the foreign multinational companies doing amazing successful stories, very productive companies like Bombardier, Boeing, Daimler Chrysler, and so on, that they are moving the manufacturers in Mexico for the whole North America. But on the other hand, we have another reality of the Mexican company that we haven't managed to achieve to be part of this global value addition. So if you are talking about investments, if you're talking about investment in manufacturing, I think it's a very good time at the same time to start to develop in some program in order to train or in order to create program for the local and domestic companies to be part of this investment that they are going to tackle.
Just a couple of minutes from you, Mr. Bajpai. Any key takeaways from India as we embark on our own Make in India journey from everything that we've discussed on the panel today?
Evolving a post-Bali roadmap is very challenging, and I think integrating the economies of emerging countries or emerging economies have to be given a sense of equality and equity. Emerging economies on their own are also making changes in legislations and also making use of technology. We have embarked upon the most major economic reformation by way of GST. It will evolve into a mechanism of fast-tracking goods and services across the country, and that would help in a good way to integrate the economies in a seamless manner. We have also been trying to use digital technology in governance, and emerging economies have taken to it in a very big way. That also is going to make the task easier. But as I said, the road ahead is very challenging. It requires a lot of understanding, a lot of sensitivity, and a lot of forethought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before we close, I'd just again like to thank our panel. Very strong cross-geographic, cross-economic perspectives on the road beyond Bali. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been a pleasure being with all of you today.
Highlights of the UP Pavilion included keen discussions with business luminaries and foreign dignitaries about upcoming infrastructure projects in the state. The stage was set to launch investments into sunrise sectors like infrastructure, information technology, agro and food processing, and energy, with a special focus on manufacturing. Industrial and structural reforms, skill development, and increased ease of doing business marked the conversation about the contribution of India's most populous state to the national economy.
You see, as far as the UP government is concerned, we want to now go on a very high growth path. We are talking in terms of a 7 to 8% growth rate. And to achieve that, we want to have a higher growth rate in the industrial sector, which means about 8 to 10% of industrial growth rate. And for that, we need investment flowing into that state. So for that, I think to invite people to the state of Uttar Pradesh, we have already evolved a policy framework, an enabling policy framework. We have industrial and infrastructure policy, we have an IT policy, we have an electronic sector policy, we have policy specifically for the food processing sector, which is very vital for the state of Uttar Pradesh.
Well, I think Australia's relationship with India needs to be double-fold. That is, the Australian government will have a relationship with the whole of India. States like South Australia can have relationships with individual states within India, one-on-one, where ministers can talk to one another face-to-face, businesses can front up to each other and do deals together. So we're very keen to meet the states within India and work at that level to build the sort of future that we want for both India and Australia.
Well, first of all, those ties are really strong, and the purpose of my visit, my mission, economic mission here, is to tighten them and to deepen them and to broaden them. And 160 Belgian companies are already investing in India in several fields. And when I heard the different speeches today, I see that we can cooperate even in a more extensive way. For instance, on the file that is announced on the Ganga Delta works, on the shipping, on the inside waters, infrastructure, energy, high-tech, health, school, education. In fact, it's a multitude of fields in which we are already active, but that we now really can proceed in a higher speed.
I think it's been phenomenally successful. You know, it's a spectacular. The interest that we've had in Uttar Pradesh, the people, you know, we were thought that we'll come in, pitch for Uttar Pradesh, and we'll try and sell a story, and we'll try and tell people what UP is really about. You know, don't get confused with what media says. Don't get, you know, the picture that gets portrayed out. There are reasons why it is that way. But we're very surprised to see that even in the international community, our people who are not really so well versed with India as a whole are still well versed with Uttar Pradesh, and they realize what UP is, the potential, the big power that it's gonna be, and the demand side is phenomenally huge. So I think there's a lot of critical interest in UP. There's a lot of partnerships that have potentially emerged here. A lot of discussions to be taken forward. And I think we've sown the seeds. There's a lot of groundwork and backwork, homework that we'll have to go back, do it there, and then come back and re-engage with these people and then take it forward.